The conference room door slammed open like a gunshot, and Timothy Hale burst in, his tie askew, eyes blazing with a fury that silenced the room. "You think I'm done? Watch me bury this place," he snarled, voice cracking like thunder over the polished oak table. Laughter erupted, sharp, mocking peals from the suits who'd just pink-slipped him for being too disruptive. Code for the whispers about his weekend with that guy from accounting. Timothy stumbled out of the elevator into the biting Chicago wind, the termination letter crumpled in his fist like a dead bird. The Loop's skyscrapers loomed above him, indifferent giants mocking his fall from the 42nd floor of Sterling and Associates, where he'd clawed his way up from intern to junior exec in 5 grueling years. At 28, he was supposed to be on the fast track, MBA from Northwestern, killer instinct in mergers and acquisitions, but one leaked email about his Grindr profile, one too many sideways glances from the old guard, and poof, fired. For cultural misalignment. The laughter still echoed in his ears. Brad from sales, choking on his latte. Elaine from HR, her titter like breaking glass. "Good luck with your little dreams, Timmy," Brad had wheezed. "You'll be slinging lattes by Christmas." He hailed a cab to his Wicker Park walk-up, the city blurring into a smear of neon and regret. Timothy's apartment was a shoebox of ambition. Framed diplomas on cinderblock shelves, a single queen bed piled with spreadsheets instead of lovers. He collapsed onto the futon, scrolling through his phone. 47 unread texts from friends offering thoughts and prayers. 2 from his ex, Ryan, who'd bailed last year after Timothy's promotion meant more late nights than candlelit dinners. "Knew that place would chew you up," Ryan's message read. Timothy deleted it without replying. He wasn't ready for pity. Not yet. The hook of it all was the injustice, a raw ache in his chest. Sterling wasn't just a job. It was his proof. His middle finger to the small-town Indiana preacher dad, who'd called him an abomination at 16, shipping him off to conversion camp with a Bible and a bus ticket. Timothy had survived that hell. Nights whispering prayers to a God who never answered. Days forcing smiles while his body screamed for truth. Chicago had been his salvation. Anonymous hookups in Boys Town. A corner office that whispered, "You're enough." Now, back to square one. Queer and discarded in America's heartland of hypocrisy. He poured a tumbler of bourbon, top shelf, a splurge from his last bonus, and paced the creaky floors. "I'll show them," he muttered to the empty room, the words tasting like ash and fire. By dawn, hungover and hollow-eyed, he fired off resumes to every headhunter in the tri-state area. Rejections piled up like snowdrifts. Overqualified. Not a culture fit. Code for we don't hire your kind. Weeks blurred into a haze of temp gigs, data entry for a nonprofit, cold calling for solar panels, each paycheck a bandage on a gaping wound. That's when George Ellis crashed into his life. Quite literally. It was a drizzly Tuesday at a dive bar in Andersonville, the kind with sticky floors and a jukebox heavy on Springsteen. Timothy nursed a pint, sketching business ideas on a napkin, a boutique consulting firm for underrepresented startups, something fierce and unapologetic. He didn't notice the barstool tipping until a broad shoulder collided with his, sending beer foaming across the counter. "Shit, sorry. Man." The voice was warm, like aged whiskey, attached to a guy who looked like he'd stepped out of a Patagonia catalog. Tousled chestnut hair, green eyes crinkled with genuine remorse, a flannel shirt rolled to elbows that revealed forearms dusted with freckles. Mid-30s, maybe, with the easy confidence of someone who'd never been knocked down. Timothy waved it off. But George, of course he introduced himself, insisted on buying around. Call it penance. I'm George. Architect by day, klutz by night. They talked for hours, the bar emptying around them. George was from Milwaukee, transplanted for a gig restoring lofts in the West Loop. Divorced, no. Not from a woman. He'd been with his college sweetheart, a guy named Alex, until the chemo one. Cancer doesn't give a damn about love letters, George said, his laugh hollow but kind. Timothy opened up too, the bourbon loosening his tongue, the firing, the laughter, the gnawing fear that he'd never outrun his own skin. By last call, George's hand lingered on Timothy's arm. You're not done, Tim. You're just getting started. What's your big plan? Timothy glanced at the napkin, ink-smudged but alive. Succeed. Bigger than they ever dreamed. By sterling and fire every last one of them. George's eyes lit up. No mockery there, just fire. Hell yes. And when you do, I'll design the plaque on your door. They exchanged numbers, and Timothy walked home under street lamps that felt a little brighter. For the first time since the axe fell, hope wasn't a dirty word. The weeks that followed were a whirlwind of stolen moments. Coffee runs turning into deep dives at George's kitchen table. Blueprints scattered amid takeout tie. George was steady, a counterweight to Timothy's storm, listening as Timothy vented about boardroom betrayals, sharing stories of his own scars. The foster kid shuffled between homes until he found architecture, a way to build something lasting. Their first kiss happened on a rooftop in Pilsen. City sprawl at their feet, George's lips tasting of mint and possibility. You're building me up already, Timothy whispered, heart hammering. But ambition doesn't wait for romance. Timothy bootstrapped Hale Ventures from his apartment. Cold emails to queer entrepreneurs sidelined by big banks. Late nights crunching numbers on a second-hand laptop. His first client was a drag queen launching an inclusive beauty line. $50K seed round. Tripled in 6 months. Word spread in underground networks. The gay kid from Indiana who fought like hell. Investors nibbled, then bit. By spring, Hale Ventures had an office in the Loop, a modest 10th-floor suite with a view of the river that didn't make him want to jump. George was there for the lease signing, toasting with cheap champagne. To burying the bastards, he said, pulling Timothy close. Their love was quiet fire. Lazy Sundays in bed, George's fingers tracing the tattoos Timothy hid under suits, resilient in script along his ribs, a rainbow phoenix on his shoulder. But shadows lingered. Timothy's phone buzzed with anonymous texts. Faggot thinks he's hot shit now. He deleted them, but the poison seeped in. Summer brought the first real win, acquiring a faltering app for LGBTQ+ mental health resources. Timothy rebranded it, scaled it nationwide. Forbes mentioned him in a blurb, the queer disruptor rising in the Midwest. Sterling's execs noticed. An email from Elaine. Coffee? Catch up? He forwarded it to George, who laughed. Trap. Don't bite. But Timothy couldn't shake the itch. Success tasted sweet, but revenge, that was nectar. Fall painted Chicago in golds and crimsons, mirroring the blaze in Timothy's veins as Hale Ventures hit 7 figures. The office hummed 3 analysts. A marketing was named Javier, who blasted Bad Bunny during brainstorming, and George, moonlighting as their unofficial vibe curator, sketching mood boards for client pitches. Their relationship deepened like the lake in winter, layers upon layers. George moved in on a whim after a blizzard stranded him, his toothbrush joining Timothy's in the minimalist bathroom, his laughter filling the loft they'd upgraded to in Ukrainian village. Nights were sanctuary. Timothy would come home wired from deals, George waiting with a home-cooked lasagna, surprisingly decent for a guy who admitted to living on PB&J in grad school. They'd curl on the couch, Timothy's head in George's lap, fingers combing through his hair as he unloaded the day's battles. "You're unstoppable," George would murmur, voice a low rumble that chased away the doubts. Sex was revelation. Slow, exploratory, George's body a map of gentle strength. Hands that built empires in miniature finding new territories on Timothy's skin. "I love you," George said one dawn, tangled in sheets, the words slipping out like sunlight. Timothy froze, then melted. "Love you more, but love doesn't blind ambition." Timothy's radar pinged on Sterling's quarterly report, leaked via a disgruntled ex-colleague. The firm was hemorrhaging clients, stock dipping like a bad Tinder date. Opportunity knocked. He assembled a war chest, venture capital from sympathetic angels, a bridge loan against his growing portfolio. "We're going hostile," he told his team, eyes gleaming. Javier hooped. The analysts nodded, fear and thrill mingling. George was the anchor. Over beers at the hideout, he leaned in. "This is war, Tim. You sure you want their blood on your hands?" "It's not blood," Timothy shot back, sharper than intended. "It's justice." They laughed. "They broke me." George's jaw tightened, but he nodded. "Then let's win." The bid launched in November, a $120 million offer that blindsided Sterling's board. Headlines screamed, "Upstart outsider eyes blue-chip target." Timothy's phone exploded. Congrats from allies, venom from foes. Brad called, voice oily. "Timmy, buddy, this a joke? Come on, let's talk." Timothy hung up, blocking the number. As due diligence dragged, tensions simmered at home. George grew distant, buried in a massive restoration project for a Logan Square warehouse. "Deadline's killing me," he'd say, kissing Timothy's forehead before crashing on the guest bed. Temporarily, he insisted. Timothy let it slide. His world was spreadsheets and strategy sessions. But the late nights stung, echoes of Ryan's ghost. Then, the betrayal hit like a freight train. It was a Thursday, rain lashing the windows as Timothy reviewed counteroffers in his office. A knock. Javier, face ashen, holding a USB drive. "Boss, you need to see this." Emails. Hundreds. From George's personal account to Sterling's legal team. Timestamps matching their pillow talk. Client lists Timothy had shared in confidence. Pivot strategies whispered over wine. George's sign-off. As discussed, feeding you everything. Close this quick, or he walks. Timothy's vision tunneled. The room spinning. George. His George. The man who'd held him through nightmares of conversion camp. Who'd traced "I am enough" on his back with fingertips. Selling him out. For what? A consulting gig? Loyalty to old frat ties? The drive included attachments. George's resume submitted to Sterling months ago, right after Timothy's first big win. Architect with insider access. Discreet. He confronted him that night, bursting into the warehouse site, hard hat askew under sodium lights. George was mid-sketch, saw the fury, and paled. "Tim, you fucking traitor." The words exploded, raw and ragged. Timothy hurled the printouts, emails fluttering like confetti from hell. How long? Since the bar? The rooftop? George's face crumpled, hands up like surrender. It wasn't like that. Sterling approached me first after your Forbes piece. Said they'd blackball my firm if I didn't help. I thought I could control it, feed them bullshit, protect you. Lies, Timothy roared, chest heaving. Rain drummed on the tin roof, mirroring the storm inside. You slept in my bed, said you loved me, while stabbing me in the back. Tears streaked George's face, mixing with sawdust. I do love you. That's why I tried to sabotage it, from the inside. Look at the dates. Half those tips were dead ends. I was buying time for you to pull out. Timothy laughed, bitter and broken. Buying time? You sold my soul for a paycheck. He turned, boots splashing through puddles. George's pleas chasing him into the night. Tim, please, don't end us. But it was ended. Shattered. Timothy drove home in a daze, the city a watercolor of hurt. He changed the locks, blocked the number, pored over the emails till dawn. Some sabotage. Sure, flawed projections that'd make Sterling overpay. But the betrayal? A knife twist. Queer love, he thought, was armor against the world's cruelty. Turns out, could wound deepest. The board meeting was electric. Sterling's execs sweating under fluorescent glare. Timothy, suited sharp, laid out the revised bid $150 million, cash heavy. Gentlemen, he said, voice steel, your house of cards falls today. Elaine fidgeted. Brad avoided his eyes. They caved by lunch, the gavel fall echoing his heartbeat. News broke that evening. Hale Ventures acquires Sterling and Associates in stunning coup. Toasts at the office turned to tears when Javier hugged him. You did it, Cabron. But victory tasted like bile. Timothy stood alone on his balcony, skyline mocking him. George texted once, proud of you. Can we talk? Deleted, unread. Winter gripped the city, ice sheeting the streets as Timothy integrated Sterling. He kept the name. Irony too delicious. Fired Brad with a smirk, promoted the few allies who'd stayed silent. Elaine begged for her job. He gave her severance and a referral to HR hell. Cultural misalignment, he echoed, her gasp his parting gift. George vanished from his orbit. No site visits. No chance encounters. Whispers said he'd taken a sabbatical, fled to Milwaukee. Timothy threw himself into expansion. Hale Sterling now championed diverse founders, a queer-led accelerator drawing talent from coasts. Success swelled, but so did the void. Dreams twisted, George's laugh morphing to sobs, hands reaching in the dark. One blizzard night, 3 months post-betrayal, the doorbell shattered the silence. Timothy opened it to George, snow-dusted, eyes hollowed by regret. I fucked up, he said, voice cracking. Let me explain, for real this time. Timothy's heart clenched, fury and longing at war. Why should I? Because I never stopped building us. Even when I broke it, he stepped aside, the door clicking shut like fate's gamble. The loft felt smaller with George in it again. His presence a ghost made flesh, damp coat dripping on the hardwood, breath fogging the air like unspoken apologies. Timothy crossed his arms, leaning against the kitchen island, the marble cold under his palms. Talk. But if it's more bullshit, you're gone. George nodded, peeling off his gloves with trembling hands. He looked wrecked, beard unkempt, the flannel hanging loose on a frame thinned by winter's bite. No bullshit. I panicked. Sterling didn't just approach me, they threatened everything. My license, my projects, said they'd bury me in lawsuits for ethical breaches if I didn't play ball. It was right after you told me about that beauty line client, the one with the IP issues. They twisted it, claimed I'd leaked it somehow. Timothy's jaw tightened. And you didn't tell me? Trusted them over me? I was protecting you. George's voice rose, then cracked. You were on fire. Tim finally free. I couldn't let them drag you down with me. So I fed them scraps. Enough to keep them off your back while I gathered proof. Screenshots. Recordings. I had a whole file to expose them for extortion. He pulled out his phone, thumbing to a folder. Audio clips of boardroom calls. Venomous threats from the chairman himself. Listen. The voice was oily, familiar. Cooperate, Ellis, or your little fairy tale ends in court. Timothy's stomach churned. Proof? Yes, but the wound festered. You could have come to me. We could have fought together. George's eyes glistened. I know. Pride, fear, call it what you want. I thought I was the knight, not the fool. By the time I realized how deep it went, you hated me. He stepped closer, close enough for Timothy to smell the pine of his cologne, mixed with snow. I love you. Still. Always. If that's not enough. It wasn't not yet. Timothy turned away, staring at the city lights fracturing through icicles. Stay the couch. One night. Then decide in the morning. George exhaled, a sound of fragile hope, and took the pull-out in the den. Sleep evaded them both. Timothy tossing to phantom touches. George murmuring in his sleep, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Dawn brought coffee, black and bitter. They talked, really talked, peeling back layers like old wallpaper. George's foster days. A dad who beat queerness out of him with belts and Bible verses, only for the system to spit him into colder hands. I learned to build walls, not bridges, he admitted. Timothy shared his own fractures. The camp counselor who'd cornered him in the showers, the first time he'd kissed a boy and tasted freedom laced with terror. We both survived by hiding, Timothy said softly. But love? That's showing up. By noon, tentative threads wove back. A shared laugh over burnt toast. George's hand brushing Timothy's as they cleared dishes. Not forgiveness yet, but a crack in the ice. Spring thawed the rift slowly. George didn't push, he showed up. Weekends volunteering at the accelerator, sketching logos for queer startups, a barbershop for trans youth, an app for immigrant safe houses. Timothy watched him, wary but warming. The way George's eyes lit when a pitch landed, how he'd linger after, whispering encouragement like secrets. Dates crept in, awkward at first, a museum stroll where hands stayed pocketed. Then bolder, a picnic in Millennium Park, fingers interlacing under the bean's shadow. Intimacy returned in whispers. One rainy evening, after a grueling board meeting where Timothy quashed a shareholder revolt, George waited with takeout and a bubble bath. You slayed dragons today, he said, pouring wine. Timothy sank into the tub, George joining behind him, arms a loose circle. No demands, just presence. Lips met in the steam, soft and searching, bodies remembering rhythms like old songs. Missed this, Timothy breathed, vulnerability a gift. But scars itched. Paranoia flickered. A late text from George, dismissed as a client. Trust rebuilt brick by brick. Hale Sterling thrived, expanding to New York. A TED Talk slot for Timothy on reclaiming the boardroom. George landed the redesign gig for their Manhattan outpost. Blueprints alive with light and openness, mirroring them. Summer peaked in a storm of joy and shadow. They road-tripped to Indiana, Timothy's old stomping grounds, a reckoning. At the family farm, now a ghost under his father's passing, they walked cornfields at dusk. "This is where I broke," Timothy said, voice thick. George knelt, pressing soil-kissed fingers to Timothy's palm. "And where you rose? Where phoenixes, love, back in Chicago, the high crashed. An audit unearthed Sterling's old skeletons, discriminatory firings, including Timothy's, buried in NDAs. A class action loomed, plaintiffs crawling out, women, POC, queers like him. Reporters swarmed, the board fractured. "We fight it," George urged. But Timothy saw the toll. Sleepless nights, Javier's worried glances. The climax brewed in a rooftop gala for the Accelerator's one-year bash. Fairy lights strung across the Wrigleyville venue, donors mingling with drag performers and tech bros. Timothy keynote, voice steady, "Success isn't climbing alone. It's lifting those they tried to bury." Applause thundered. George's proud gaze from the wings anchored him. Then, chaos. Brad, fired but unbowed, stormed the mic, drunk and venomous. "This fraud bought his way in. He's no hero, just a spiteful queer settling scores." Gasps rippled. Phones whipped out. Timothy froze, the old laughter roaring back. George surged forward, yanking the cord. "Enough! You lost. Get out." Security hauled Brad away, but the damage seeped, whispers, headlines brewing, acquirers past Haunt's empire. Alone in the green room, Timothy shattered. "It's all tainted. They win again." George knelt, cupping his face. "No. You built this. We built this. Let me fight with you. For real." Tears hot, Timothy nodded. The betrayals' echo faded, replaced by resolve. Together, they'd weather it. Autumn winds howled through the canyons of Chicago as the lawsuit metastasized, a hydra of depositions and discovery demands. Hale Sterling's war room, a converted conference space on the 15th floor, became ground zero, whiteboards scrawled with timelines, coffee rings staining case files. Timothy paced like a caged wolf, his suits rumpled, the phoenix tattoo peeking from unbuttoned collars like a battle flag. "They want blood," he growled to Javier, who nodded grimly, scrolling plaintiff emails. "We give 'em justice." George was omnipresent, his architect's precision slicing through legalese. He'd taken leave from his firm, bunking full-time at the loft, their mornings now rituals of fortitude. Strong coffee, George's steady hand on Timothy's knee under the table. "One deposition at a time," he'd say, green eyes unyielding. Their love had evolved, less wildfire, more hearth. Quiet fucks in the shower after midnight strategy sessions. Bodies slick with exhaustion and need. Whispers of "we're unbreakable" against tiled walls. The plaintiff's stories gutted him. Maria, a Latina analyst sidelined for attitude after maternity leave. Jamal, a black marketer passed over for promotions. Whispers of affirmative action hires. And Alex, a A non-binary coder fired for pronoun confusion in emails. Timothy met them in a sunlit cafe, voices overlapping in shared rage. "You gave us a voice," Alex said, eyes fierce behind wire rims. "Now we amplify it." The betrayal's ghost lingered, though. In quiet moments, doubt crept. Was George's loyalty ironclad? Or another performance? One night, post a brutal cross-exam where Elaine perjured herself on the stand. Timothy was disruptive, yes, but policy. He confronted it over whiskey. "If this crumbles, do you stay or run like before?" George set his glass down, deliberate. "I ran because I feared losing you to their poison. Now, I'd burn it all for you." He crossed the room, pulling Timothy to his feet, foreheads touching. "You're my blueprint. No revisions." The kiss sealed it, fierce, reclaiming. They made love on the rug, slow and sacred, George's body a vow, hips grinding with purpose, mouths mapping forgiveness. Afterward, tangled and spent, Timothy traced the scar on George's chest from Alex's illness. "We're survivors," he murmured. Time to thrive. The trial unfolded in a federal courthouse downtown, all marble halls and muffled sobs. Timothy testified first, voice steady as he recounted the firing, the email leak, the laughter, the soul crush of being erased for existing. "Sterling didn't just let me go," he said, eyes locking on the jury, Midwestern faces, a mix of skepticism and sympathy. "They erased my worth. But I rebuilt. For me. For all of us." Brad took the stand, sweating under fluorescent glare, his denials crumbling like cheap drywall. "It was business," he blustered. George's recordings played, extortion in tinny clarity, and the courtroom hushed. The chairman invoked the fifth, face ashen. Outside, media circled, CNN panels debating corporate queerness, TikToks going viral with hail rising. Supporters rallied, pride flags waving on Michigan Avenue, queer activists chanting Timothy's name. George stood sentinel, his hand in Timothy's during press gauntlets, a quiet fuck you to the trolls. Climax crested in closing arguments. The prosecution painted Sterling as a relic, a machine grinding dreams to dust. Timothy's lawyer, a sharp-dressed dyke from Skokie, turned to him, "Mr. Hale, what now?" He rose, unbidden, voice carrying. "Now, we own it. Not to destroy, but to heal. Every boardroom bears our scars and our stories." The jury deliberated 2 days. The loft became a vigil of takeout and tension. George cooked fettuccine, his victory pasta, but plates cooled untouched. On hour 47, the call came, $200 million settlement, plus reforms, mandatory bias training, diverse hiring quotas, a foundation for sideline talent. Elation exploded. Javier popped champagne in the office, plaintiffs hugging in the hall. Timothy and George fled to the lakefront, toes in Lake Michigan's chill, waves crashing like applause. "We did it," Timothy laughed, spinning George under sodium lights. Their kiss tasted of salt and triumph, hands roaming urgent, a quick fumble in the dunes that left them breathless and alive. But humanism whispered deeper. The win was Pyrrhic, scars mapped their souls. Timothy donated his share to the foundation, naming it Phoenix Rising, mentoring the Mariahs, Jamal's, Alex's. George designed its headquarters. Glass walls for transparency, rainbow accents in the steel. Winter softened into tentative peace. Holiday lights twinkled as they hosted a solstice dinner. Javier and his husband. Plaintiffs turned friends. Toasts to new chapters. George's ring, simple tungsten, engraved built to last, slipped onto Timothy's finger over eggnog. "Marry me?" he asked, on one knee by the tree. Timothy's yes was a sob, the room erupting. Yet, in the hush after, doubts flickered. Success amplified scrutiny. Bored whispers of too woke, a rival firm's smear campaign. Timothy confided one dawn, head on George's chest. "What if it's never enough? The world's still laughing." George tilted his chin. "Then we laugh back. Louder. Together." Their wedding was spring, a rooftop affair in the West Loop, cherry blossoms drifting like confetti. Vows echoed the city's hum. Timothy promising to build empires of us. George vowing no more walls, only windows. Javier officiated. Tearing up, Ryan showed, older, wiser, clapping from the back. Honeymoon in Provincetown. Dune walks, lobster rolls, nights lost in each other. Back home, Hail Sterling boomed, global now, a beacon. But the heart, that stayed small, intimate. Lazy mornings, George's sketches on the fridge, Timothy's hand on a swelling belly. No, wait, adoption papers for a foster kid named Eli, freckled and fierce like George. Betrayal's lesson lingered. Love wasn't armor, but choice. Daily, renewed. Years folded like origami. Hail Sterling, a colossus spanning coasts. Its logo, a stylized phoenix, emblazoned on billboards from Seattle to Miami. Timothy, at 35, was a fixture. Keynotes at Davos. Profiles in the Atlantic hailing him as the queer kingmaker. Boardrooms bent to his will. Not with fear, but respect. Diversity no longer buzzword, but bedrock. Yet, the fire that forged him smoldered on. Quiet donations to conversion camp survivors. Pro bono deals for trans entrepreneurs fleeing red states. George thrived too. His firm a darling of sustainable design. Green retrofits for queer community centers. Lofts that breathed openness. Fatherhood suited him. Eli, plucked from Milwaukee's foster churn at 6. Now 10 and all gangly limbs and questions. "Dad, Tim Dad, why's the world mean to gay people?" He'd ask over pancakes. Syrup-sticky fingers gesturing wildly. Timothy would field it gently. It was. "We're changing it, kiddo." George, ever the builder, followed with Lego empires. "See, you design the world you want." Their marriage was mosaic, cracks sealed with gold. Kintsugi strong. Anniversaries marked rituals. The Andersonville bar for first spills. Rooftop toasts for kisses reclaimed. Sex evolved. Less urgency. More depth. Lazy Sundays where bodies mapped histories. George's mouth tracing Timothy's tattoos like prayers. "Still my blueprint," he'd murmur. Thrust slow as sunrises. But conflict never fully sleeps. It resurfaced in a whisper. Eli's school, a progressive charter in Lincoln Park, where a new principal, fresh from the Bible Belt, hinted at traditional values in parent emails. Bullying spiked. Notes in Eli's backpack. Very kid. Echoes of Timothy's youth. Rage boiled. He marched in, George at his flank. "My son is enough," Timothy declared, voice ablade. The principal backpedaled. Policies shifted overnight. Deeper tremors came from within. A merger temptress, a Silicon Valley giant, fat with cash, hungry for Hale's soul. The board salivated $2 billion valuation, but Timothy balked. It's a sellout. They want our edge without the heart. George, poring over terms in their home office. Agreed. Build. Don't bow. The climax brewed boardroom style. A late-night showdown. Suits versus soul. The chairman, ex-Sterling holdover, reformed but greedy, pushed. This is legacy, Tim. Cash out. Sail into sunset. Laughter rippled. Ugly reminder. Timothy stood, heart pounding. Legacy? I bought this company to rewrite the story. Not cash it in for their sequel. George, silent observer, broke ranks. He's right. We've built more than money, lives. Eli's future, the kids we mentor. Fold now, and it's betrayal all over. The room hushed, votes swung. Merger dead. Applause, tentative then thunderous. Outside, rain-slick streets. Timothy pulled George into an alley kiss. Fierce, victorious. You chose us. Again. Home to Eli's soccer game. Cheers under floodlights. Normalcy's bomb. Betrayal's final echo came personal. Ryan, Timothy's ex, resurfaced via a chance gala. Older, partnered, but eyes lingering. You did it, Tim. The kid from Indiana. Over wine. Confessions. Ryan's regrets. His own battles with a closeted career. No spark, just closure. George is your anchor, Ryan said. Timothy nodded, hand finding George's across the table. Damn right, the humanistic arc crested in giving back. Phoenix Rising evolved, a national network. Scholarships for foster queer youth. Timothy and George as patrons. Eli's bar mitzvah blended faith. Rainbow Talith drew crowds. Survivors sharing stages. Laughter drowning old laughs. One crisp fall eve. Atop their Pilsen rooftop, their first kiss spot, Timothy proposed a toast. City hummed below. Eli asleep inside. They laughed, he said, clinking glasses. We soared. George smiled, arm around his waist. And bought the sky. No tidy bows, life's messier. A recession loomed. Eli's teen angst brewed, but they faced it woven tight. Love, Timothy learned, wasn't absence of hurt, but presence through it. Queer, American Dream recast. Not assimilation, but revolution. Hearts open, hands clasped, they built on. In the end, success wasn't the buyout, the billions, the bows. It was this, a man who laughed last, loved deepest, lived unapologetic. The world still whispered, but now, they roared back.